Two things happened to me this past week, and they looked completely unrelated from 30,000 feet. One was a business conversation, and the other was an opportunity for me to do stand-up over the weekend. On the surface, there's nothing that connects them, like literally. It's a different experience, different rooms, different people, just different parts of my life, different parts of my personality, totally different worlds. But on Sunday night, as I sat there just relishing the experiences of the past week, I realized that these were the exact same thing on a core level. It was the same lesson, and they were just basically just wearing a different shell. They had on different outfits, if you will. And both of them, they came wrapped in something that I wasn't expecting. And it's something that I've talked about a lot as a key piece to every part of your growth. And that's this. They both came wrapped in discomfort, like real physical, in my chest, anxious discomfort. And in both situations, it wasn't dangerous. The reasons for this discomfort had nothing to do with actual danger. It was just fear. Now, I want to tell you both of these stories today, and I want to show you that the mechanism and the foundation underneath them is real, and it's something most likely that you are experiencing on some level if you're willing to look closer. Because I think it's one of the most useful things that I've come across in a long time, this whole kind of connection of things. The more I go down the funnel, so to speak, I'm seeing how interconnected so much of the life experiences that we have are. And we might find them to be happenstance or odd, but when you get down to it, it's all the same, which means it's predictable on some level, which means you've got this. I want to talk about this as a pattern. It's apparently been running this whole time for me. And last week and this last weekend, I finally got to see it work in real time in two different places and two different scenarios at once. By the way, welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Bryce Prescott. Let's get into it. You know, there's a line that I've said on this show before. I think I've said it on this show. I didn't come up with it. I don't get to take credit. But it is completely true, and it's something I want to lead with right now. And that line is this: luck is the residue of preparation and motion. Most people hear that and they'll nod along because it sounds right, and it's got that motivational feel. Yeah, luck is the residue of preparation and motion. You know the whole thing. But I don't think most people actually understand what it's saying. Because if you really understood it, you'd stop expecting luck to show up on any kind of predictable schedule. You don't do the work on Monday and then you get the payoff on Tuesday. Residue accumulates. Sometimes for months, sometimes for years. You put in motion, you put in preparation, and then nothing happens for a long stretch of time sometimes. Long enough that most people quit. Long enough that most people decide that the actual preparation wasn't working, and long enough that most people put the thing down entirely and they go do something else. You guys have all seen that meme of that guy that's mining for gold and it shows him just right there. That's a version of residue in that he's in motion, he's preparing, and it's the combination of those things where you get lucky. And that's the part nobody talks about because it's not a good story. Yet, at least. There's no podcast episode that says, I've been doing this for 2 years and guess what? Nothing's happened, man. I'm just going to keep doing it. You know how boring of a podcast story that is? It lacks no framework. There's no hero's journey. There's no climax. People just quit right there, right before that little bit of luck, that residue would start to show up. It's really simple. It's predictable. It's because there's no feedback. There's nothing telling them that it's coming. You're just in the middle of the process. You're uncomfortable. You're doing it. There's no notification of anything coming. There's no sign. It's just silent. You're doing the work. You're in motion every single day. You know what you want. You're going towards it. And it feels like nothing is, it's not changing. That's where people get stuck and they get lost. And that's exactly the part that nobody talks about. So here's the other thing. that nobody will tell you about this concept of the residue. When it finally does show up, it doesn't usually show up clean. It shows up with a bit of discomfort attached. The exact moment that your preparation will start to pay off is often the very exact moment that you feel the least ready, the most exposed, and most likely you feel like an imposter in that moment. And that timing is brutal because it makes you want to retreat at the precise moment that you should be leaning forward. I bring this up because I've lived both of these scenarios this week. The slow accumulation, the preparation, and then the discomfort showed up right when the residue started to arrive, right when the luck was presenting itself. So let me tell you what happened. I've talked in the show recently about the opportunity that has come to me through a guy that I did a podcast with. Somebody I like, somebody I almost talked myself out of taking the call with him. Because in my instinct, I thought it was a sales call. I didn't know anything about what he actually wanted to talk to me about. I just was like, he's going to sell me something. But fortunately, I liked the guy and I took the call anyway. And it turned into something real. The short version is this. There's a chance for me to take everything I've already built with my podcast company, my coaching, my existing offers, my team, my whole operation, and take that puzzle piece and plug it into something bigger. A larger, extraordinary network. More business for the people that work with me is the result. More reach, more influence, more financial reward and capacity, all without me having to do more work, just better work, smarter positioning work, and to take what I've already built. We spent the last week or so going back and forth on the actual details. We've discussed numbers and structure, roles, expectations, billing. It's pretty exciting. I want to be honest about that part. It's really exciting, like genuinely exciting. I'm stoked about what this could mean. But I also want to be honest about something as well, that in this excitement, its cousin, discomfort, right there. Real discomfort. And it's because this isn't just me anymore, making a decision in a vacuum. This is me being on the hook to a bigger vision, to a team that isn't just mine, and it's an agenda as well that has other people's expectations attached to it. And there's weight to that. There's a version of me that wants to shrink back, tempted to play small and just to kind of lean back. Like, no, I'm comfortable in my own space. I'm doing great as it is. And that's where I had to get honest with myself about things. That discomfort isn't telling me that something's wrong. There's no actual danger here. Nobody's threatening me. Nothing bad is happening. The discomfort is just this unfamiliar feeling of a bigger container than the one I've been operating in. I spent the last while building something that I control completely. My business is on my terms. It's at my pace. And this new opportunity, it asks me to be a part of something that's larger than that. Something with more moving parts and more people counting on me and counting on the outcome to which I provide. Like I said, that's not dangerous. It's just new. And I had to remind myself in real time that the discomfort I was feeling, it wasn't a verdict on whether I should do this or not. It was just proof that I was standing at the edge of something that I hadn't done before. The preparation, the years of building the podcast company, all the learning that I've done to help hosts become great, the coaching that I've done, whether it be in podcasting or as a life coach, business consultant, all of this stuff, the lab, my team, the lists that I've made, the decisions about what I want out of my life, both in material items and experiences, the domains of my life, my goals in their entirety, all came to a head. And that preparation, it put me in the room for this opportunity in the first place. And the discomfort is just a layer. It's the sign saying, lean here, this is where you need to grow most. Here's an opportunity to do it. Like I said, it's not a stop sign. It's just a sign. It's the doorway. The other thing that happened this week was I got to get back into the comedy scene this weekend in a big way. As a reminder, and this isn't me flexing or bragging by any means, these are just stating facts. I've been a headlining comedian. I've done a lot of stand-up where my name was on the marquee. I was the draw. The tickets that were being sold had my name on them. I've done this hundreds, if not thousands of times where I've stood in front of crowds and told jokes in dark rooms, and it fills me up. Real stages, real crowds, real material. It's been tested. It's been sharpened. It's been refined. I've recorded it. I've put it out there. I mean, we're talking literally, like when I think about it, most likely in the thousands of hours I've done this. And ever since I moved to Scottsdale, I've had this sort of slowdown of that part of my personality and my skills. For some reason, whether it be my issues in my marriage and other stuff with my business, it just eluded me. There were opportunities here, but the effort seemed too much. It was just as if all these chances were eluding me. I wasn't taking advantage of things. I didn't want to go and do open mics in front of Monday Night Football. I'm a headliner. I'm a comedy club comedian. I had this arrogance about it. I just didn't want to do that. And so what it created for me was frustration. A part of my personality, a part of my skills were just kind of locked over in the corner, not let out to play. Because I didn't really have an outlet. I didn't have a regular stage. There really wasn't anything that felt stable that gave me the chance to actually lean into that version of myself, comedian version. And then this week, out of nowhere, it showed up. I got invited on Friday to do an improv comedy show in Tempe. I got invited by a close friend who is a hilarious comedian, somebody that had opened for Rob Schneider on the road. Very, very funny guy. And I go to this improv comedy deal and he asks me if I want to do a stand-up set. And I turned it down. I'm like, I'll just be here for the skits and the improv. This is enough for me right now. And at the end of that show, I realized that was me playing small. I very well could have pulled off doing 5 to 10 minutes of stand-up. But after that improv show in Tempe, I decided to drive up to the Desert Ridge Improv in Scottsdale. And I went to hang out there with a good friend of mine who just so happens to be a famous comedian by the name of Jeff Dye. If you don't know Jeff, he's the sweetest. He's genuinely funny. He's legitimately famous. He's successful as a comedian. He lives his craft. He practices his craft. He's masterful at it. And I was hanging out in the green room while he was finishing up his last set for his late show. And he came out and we just started talking. It was so great to see him. And I all of a sudden, being in the green room of a famous comedy club, hanging out with a comedian that just went out and destroyed that room, had everybody roaring in laughter, I started to feel this sort of energy return to me. When I dropped Jeff off at his hotel after that evening, I got invited to hang out with him and somebody else at the pool at the hotel to which he was staying at, which was the Fairmont Princess here in Scottsdale. We had incredible conversation during that time, high-level conversations about pursuing your dreams, about the skills required to do it, about what actually changes how you think, and then the process of everything. I love conversations with successful and famous comedians because they're usually some of the smartest people that you can meet. In order to be good at humor, it's a combination of skill sets that's very, very difficult. And Jeff is one of the best. And so he's just sharp. And I've always loved his insight. And so I got to dip into that well, so to speak. And some of the stuff that we talked about, it's had me think about ideas and scenarios, even days later, like really thought-provoking stuff. Because of that hang that we had then and hanging out together, he invited me to come and do sets on his Sunday night shows. They had added 2 shows to his weekend on Sunday night. His original opener and host had to leave for a different commitment. And so there was spots that had been opened up for somebody. And Jeff said, "Hey, you want to come do time on my shows this Sunday?" And I said, yes, immediately. And the second that word left my mouth, the anxiety came in. And I realized that means I have to actually prepare. I haven't done stand-up for a long time, over a year. I got to build a set. I got to either write new stuff or dip into the old well. I need to sharpen it. I need to practice it. I need to figure out how to get my timing back so that it lands with the crowd. I got to get that sense of self in front of a crowd back. At his level, the crowd there has realistic expectations. I mean, they're there to laugh and they want to laugh. But if you're not funny, they let you know it. And so I'm starting to feel this anxiety about it. And here's the part I want to be really honest about. I'm not exaggerating when I say I was a nervous wreck. I was legitimately anxious, genuinely anxious, in a way that surprised me a little bit, actually. Because like I said, I have thousands of hours on stage. I've done this a ton. I'm not new to this. I know how to be funny in a room. I know how to tell jokes. And still, the idea of walking into that club on Sunday to perform in front of his crowd, I felt exposed. I felt out of practice. Like I might not be as good as I remember myself being. Every comedian has horror stories about when you take time off, it's really, really hard to get back on the saddle. All of that was swarming in my mind. And that anxiety, it wasn't really about my skills. Because the skill's there. Like I said, so many hours. It just doesn't go away. It doesn't evaporate. You don't forget everything when you're out of practice. What I was actually feeling was the gap between my identity as a comedian and the recent silence surrounding my identity as a comedian. 2 years without very much stage time was making me doubt it. It was making me doubt the thing that I knew to be true about myself. And you do the same thing. You doubt things that you know to be true about yourself, even when you have proof that they're true. I have all the proof that I need to show that I can do this, that I have done this, and that I can do it again. And I had to lean into that discomfort in the same way I did with the business stuff. Like I said, there's no danger. I mean, I might embarrass myself. I might let down Jeff. I might get booed or heckled. That's not dangerous. That's just scary. It's a little different. Nobody was going to take my comedy away from me if the set didn't go perfectly. The worst outcome was just rough 10 minutes in front of a crowd. And then they would forget about it because that's what happens. The discomfort wasn't protecting me from anything real. It was just this sort of fear of that unfamiliar feeling of stepping back into a room I hadn't been in for a while. Like I said, it wasn't something I didn't know. It was just got unfamiliar. I was having a hard time remembering all the data of what that feeling was like. And so I did what I encourage you to do. I leaned in. I prepared my set. I wrote some new jokes. I resurrected some old jokes. I showed up, prepared, ready to go. Did the process I used to do that made me so that I knew I could shine on stage. I stepped back into that in a real way. Not in theory, but in practice. In my body. In the room. In real time. Exactly who I am as a comedian. And how good I can actually be when I commit to it. I lived in that place. I stepped into that identity. I reminded myself, oh, this is you, dude. And I did great. Those 2 shows, incredible. The second that I got on stage and told my first joke, anxiety gone. Felt right at home in front of that crowd. Looking around at the faces that I could see and seeing them laugh and seeing their body shift as they chuckle, seeing their discomfort as I said something they might not be okay with thinking is funny, but they do think it's funny. And here's what I think actually happened this whole weekend. It wasn't luck that I did well. It wasn't luck finding a guy who used to do comedy. It wasn't luck in Jeff finding a guy that he knows that used to do comedy. It was luck finding a guy who never actually put the costume away. I've kept writing jokes in my head for years, even though I haven't had a stage to perform them on. I've kept thinking like a comedian. I love making people laugh at any chance I get. Even being here in Arizona where I don't have that same outlet as I used to, or didn't have that same outlet. And when the door opened, I was ready for Jeff, for the improv show, those Sunday spots. In me, there was already a comedian that was standing there ready to walk through the door. And even though I didn't feel ready, I had stayed ready on some level because I never let it die. Now, if I'd let those 2 quiet years convince me that the comedy chapter was over, there's no version of this weekend that happens. The residue and the luck wouldn't have had anything to attach itself to. I would not have been in motion. I want to name the thing that connects both of these stories, because I think it's bigger than just the individual moments. In both situations, whether it's the business deal or the comedy weekend, I felt something that, if I'm being honest, and I label it, was this. I felt insecure. I didn't feel danger. I didn't feel threatened. I felt insecure. Insecurity. And I've come to define that word very specifically for myself, and I think it's worth sharing here. Insecurity is what happens when you step into the unknown while you're still holding on to an old, unfavorable story about yourself. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. It's not that something is bad. It's not that something bad is actually happening. It's that you're standing in a new territory, a bigger business opportunity, a return to the stage you haven't stood on in years, and some old narrative that's still running in the background that was trying to say, I'm not ready, I'm out of practice. What if I'm not who I used to be? What if I bomb? What if this is too big of a moment for my preparation? None of these stories are about what's actually happening in the moment right now. They're just leftover scripts from a version that existed before this moment. And even though I'm telling these stories in the first person, these apply to you as well. The discomfort you feel isn't evidence that the story is true. It's evidence that you're standing exactly at the edge of where your old story and the new reality haven't caught up to each other yet. That gap, it's uncomfortable by nature. It's supposed to feel unfamiliar. That's not a malfunction. That's just the edge of growth. It's really predictable. Here's the part that matters most, too. There is a new story waiting on the other side of that discomfort. Not guaranteed to be perfect, not guaranteed to go exactly how you scripted it, but waiting. And only you get access to that new story by leaning in to the exact discomfort that's trying to convince you to stay where the old story still makes sense and still has you feeling comfortable. I leaned into it twice this week, once with the team and the bigger vision, and once on Sunday night with that crowd that I wasn't sure I was ready. Now, both of them had a new version of my own story waiting on the other side. And I only found out in both cases by walking through that discomfort instead of walking away with it. So let's bring all this together. 2 things happened this week that looked unrelated. A business opportunity built on preparation I didn't even fully realize I was accumulating, and a comedy weekend built on 2 quiet years where I stayed a comedian even without stage time to prove it. Different rooms, same mechanism. Residue showing up exactly when it was ready to, not when I scheduled it. Both of them arrived with discomfort. Real, physical, talk yourself out of it discomfort. Not because anything dangerous was happening, but because I was standing at the edge of a story about myself that had not been written yet. The old story said I wasn't ready. I wasn't enough. I wasn't built for something this big. The discomfort was just the sound of that old story bumping up against a new reality that I hadn't accounted for. Now, here's what I want you to take from this. Whatever you've quietly kept doing or kept being, even without a stage for it right now, that's not wasted time. That's residue accumulating, whether you can see it or not. And when it finally shows up, it's probably going to bring some discomfort with it. And that's not a sign to back away. That's the signal that you're standing exactly where a new story is waiting to be written. So stay identifiable as the thing you actually are. For me, it was a comedian. For you, it's something different. But stay identifiable even when nobody's asking you to be that right now. Keep moving. Keep preparing, even in the silence. And when the discomfort shows up at the door alongside the opportunity, and it will, lean in anyway. There is no danger there. Just an old story, finally being replaced by a newer, better, truer one. My friends, you're listening to The Lab, but before I close this out, I wanted to make an invitation. You've heard me talk on this podcast before about my group coaching experience called The Lab. We meet every Wednesday as a group of entrepreneurs that are in the fight, creating, designing, and achieving the life of our dreams. And we are expanding. We've had some new members join the group. And as I have these new incredible people in our group, I'm realizing how powerful this community is and how you very well could be in desperate need for the exact thing that we provide by being a member of our community called The Lab. I'd like you to consider joining us. Go to my website, bryceprescott.com, and click on the link that asks about the Lab experience and read what I've written there and see if it speaks to you. And if it does, fill out the form and allow yourself a chance to at least try for once sitting with us on one of these Wednesday calls. Everything that I've shared here today with you has been made easier by my association with the community that I built. Everybody in our community is succeeding on some level now. We've overcome some of the things that were holding us back, and as we grow and expand, new opportunities show up for our growth. And you could very well be in that place where you're ready for this type of support, this type of guidance, and this type of community. You're invited to join us. My friends, you've been listening to The Lab. I am your host, Bryce Prescott. And like I always say, until next time, take it a day at a time. I'll see you.